Welcome back. In the earlier lecture, we created an AWS root account, and I also protected it with an additional layer of security by enabling multi-factor authentication. AWS does not recommend using a root account for day-to-day work. Instead, we should create one or more IAM users to use and operate with the AWS account. In this video, I'll help you to create one IAM account for yourself. However, I also want to take it as an opportunity to talk about the AWS IAM service. So let's start. In the earlier video, I introduced you to 6 core AWS service categories. Here is the list. In this video, I want to elaborate on the 4th service category, security, identity, and compliance. Let me show you the list of all services classified under this category. Go to the aws.amazon.com. Click the products menu and look for security, identity, and compliance. Click it and go to the service category page. Here it is. Security, identity, and compliance is one of the largest service categories offered by AWS. And the reason is straightforward. Creating and managing users, securing your applications, infrastructure, and data, protecting against security threats, and complying with data privacy and other legal requirements are major concerns for an enterprise-grade application. AWS offers you more than 25 individual services for doing all this. Scroll down and you will see the list of all those 25 plus services listed here. These services are further classified into 6 subcategories, and all these 6 service subcategory names are intuitive. However, we do not care much about the service categories and subcategory names. You will not see any question about the service categories and subcategories. The certification exam will ask you questions about your understanding of the services. It doesn't matter if you do not remember the classification. So we will be focusing on the service names. What do they offer and how to use them? Make sense? In this video, I want to elaborate on the first service, AWS Identity and Access Management. This one is more popularly known for its abbreviation, the IAM. So let's talk about the IAM. The first and the most important question is this: what is IAM? AWS IAM is a web service. In fact, everything in AWS is a web service. Now the next question: what can we do using the AWS IAM web service? The answer is straight. AWS IAM allows you to control access and permissions for other AWS web services and resources. That's a good short answer, but how does it work? I mean, just looking at the name, Identity and Access Management, you can tell that the IAM is designed to help you create user identities and manage access permissions for those user identities, right? But how does it work and how do we use it? Let's try to understand it. IAM allows you to create the following things: users, groups, and policies. These are just basic things, and IAM offers you many other things that I'll cover in a separate video. In this video, let's focus on the fundamentals only. Great. IAM allows you to create users. These users may represent a person or a service. When you create a user, you want them to access one or more AWS services. And these users can access AWS services in 3 different ways. AWS Management Console is a web-based interface, and I already showed you this method to access AWS. We use the AWS Management Console for doing ad hoc and non-repetitive work, which you want to do occasionally. For example, creating users, checking your monthly billing, and other similar things. But for most of the repetitive work, we want to automate it. And that's where AWS CLI comes into play. AWS CLI is a command line tool that you can download to your local machine and use the CLI to access AWS services from the command line. The CLI allows you to create and run scripts for repetitive activities. I'll show you some examples as we progress with the course. The third option is using AWS APIs and SDK. AWS allows you to access and work with services using REST APIs. However, they also offer language-specific SDKs such as Java, .NET, Ruby, and many other more. The point is straight. You will have your team members, scripts, and applications willing to access AWS services for doing some work. All of these must have a user identity, and you can create them using the IAM. The next thing is the group. An IAM group is a collection of IAM users. For example, you can create an admin group and add some users to this group. Similarly, you can create separate groups for developers and testers. The final part of the puzzle is a policy. A policy is a JSON document that defines what action is allowed on which AWS resources, under which circumstances. An IAM policy is a complex JSON document, but most of the time, you will be creating it using a user-friendly web interface. So the process is straightforward. You will start by creating one or more IAM users. Then you will create user groups and add those users to their respective groups. Finally, you will create one or more policies and assign them to the user group. And these policies will set user permissions. That's how it works at a high level. Now, let's try all this to see it in action. I am logged in to my AWS Management Console using the root user. However, I do not want to use the root user credentials for my day-to-day work. So let me create a new user for myself. I can create a new one using the IAM service. You might find a link to the IAM service in your recently visited links. You can also find it in all services. Here it is. Let me click it. Great. Here is my IAM dashboard. The left side of the IAM console page shows you some menu items. You can create groups, users, roles, and policies. You can also configure third-party identity providers and do a lot many other things. I'll cover those things in a later video when we return back to learn more about the IAM module. The IAM dashboard also shows you a sign-in URL. What is that? Let me explain. You can log into AWS console using console.aws.amazon.com, and that's what I used to log in as a root user. However, that method is mainly used by the root user only. An IAM user must know the direct sign-in URL. The number shown here in this URL is your unique AWS account ID. So, an IAM user should know the account ID, or he should know the sign-in URL. Without this URL, or without knowing the account ID, an IAM user cannot log into the AWS console. Make sense? Great. I'll come back to the sign-in URL once again. Let's go to the users page and create a new user. As of now, I do not have any IAM user. Let me add one new user. Give a username. Now we must declare the access type of the user. We have two options. Programmatic access is for those users who want to access AWS using the CLI, API, or SDK. The second type is for those who want to access the AWS Management Console. Let me choose the second option. I want to use this user for accessing the AWS from the Management Console. Now, you must set a user password. AWS can auto-generate a password for this user, or you can manually create a new password. Let me set a custom password. I do not want to reset my password on the first login, so let me remove this option. Click Next, and you will go to the user permissions page. Now, it's time to assign some permissions to the user. However, AWS doesn't allow you to give permissions directly to a user. The permissions are always defined in a policy document, and then a policy is assigned to a user. AWS offers you a bunch of predefined policies. You can assign one or more existing policies to a user. However, we do not assign policies directly to a user. You have an option, but that's not a recommended best practice. The best practice is to assign the user to a group and attach policies to the group. But I do not have a group, so let me create a new group. Give a name to the group. Let me call it admin. Now, I can attach some policies to this group. I have two options, create a new policy, or I can also attach an existing predefined policy. Let me attach the administrator access policy. This policy is predefined for admins, and it provides admin access to all AWS services and resources. That is all. Let me create the group. Great. Now the user will become part of the selected group. This group has an administrator access policy. So the user will also get administrator access. Make sense? Let's move on to the next step. I'll talk about the tags later. Let's move on to the next step. This one is a final review page. All looks fine. So let me create the new user now. Great. We got the success message. You can see this sign in URL. This one is the same you saw in the IAM dashboard. You must send this URL and password to the user so he can sign into the AWS Management Console. In fact, you can download this CSV file and share it with the user. This file comes with all the necessary login information. Great, we are almost done. Let me close this and go back to the IAM dashboard. Here it is. Do you see this URL? This URL contains a numeric AWS account ID. It could be hard to remember this number. So let me customize it. What am I doing? I am setting an alias for my account. Let me create it. Great. Do you see this URL? Now it looks better and I can remember it. The point is straight. You can memorize your account ID or you can set an account alias. Why? Because you will need it to log into your AWS account. I copied this URL already. Let me sign out from the root account. Now let's try login as an IAM user. Start a new browser window and paste the sign-in URL. The IAM user login page looks like this. You will need your account ID or account alias. Enter your username, password, and hit the sign in button. There you go. Do you see the username here at the top right corner? Great. So you are now logged in as an IAM user. That's all for this video. See you again. Keep learning and keep growing.